You're tuned in to Ask the Master Auto Technician. Car questions? Get answers right now. Call 850-763-0555.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.
Hey, welcome to Ask the Master Auto Technician. I've got Stephen Lang. He's from Powder Springs, Georgia. I just knew it was Georgia, but I don't even know where Powder Springs, Georgia is. It must be so far up in the woods, Stephen. They pump sunshine into y'all?
Well, I'll put it this way. It's somewhere between civilization and deliverance.
Do I hear banjos?
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's actually we have a scholarship program for banjos at our little high school, and we also have one for jugs and saws. We believe in diversity.
I tell you what, I'm happy for you. Now, speaking of diversity, cars are very diverse. We have the cars that are extremely exotic, that are very, very expensive, that most people can't afford to fix or even to own. And then we have the cars that are not so expensive. And, you know, the everyday drivers, like, well, the guy that just called about his Dodge product, his 2005 or his Caravan. I mean, these are pretty common cars, and you buy these cars, or no, you don't. You buy them, some of them, but you do research on them and you write about them. What are some of the good, the bad, and the ugly cars out there that people need to know about and maybe stay away from, or maybe embrace if they see when it comes their way?
Well, the first thing is you're not really buying a car so much as you're buying the prior owner. The way the prior owner maintained the vehicle, the way the prior owner drove the vehicle, the way the prior owner cared for the vehicle, that has by far the greatest impact on your long-term happiness when buying a used car.
That is so true. Very true. Yes. That is, and that's the thing that goes on. People will sit there. Hey, well, you wrote an article on Facebook about the 15,000-mile oil changes. And I got people all the time, well, I go 15,000 miles. I just smile at them and say, okay, go ahead. I don't have any problem with it. But those same cars that go 15,000 miles on oil changes, when I see them at 100,000 miles or when they get out of warranty, it's not real pretty inside the engine. It's kind of ugly. I don't know if you see that or not. I see a lot of sludge build up. And Mark Sarlo, automotive engineer, was telling me that the synthetic oil that they, well, like Valvoline or Castrol, the oil that's sold over here of Castrol or Valvoline is not the same synthetic oil that's sold in Europe. And I had no idea about that. So these people are putting in really blended, fully synthetic oils, and they're building sludge up. And
yes, one of the biggest misses in articles that you write is sometimes you put in information that other people don't realize is actually there. One ingredient I put in our recent article related to that was the fact that you have to have an oil that's already guaranteed for 15,000 miles to use, and even before you use that full time, you have to figure out whether your car can actually take it. Yes. And the best way of doing that, if you want to do that type of thing, is to, first of all, get an oil analysis done and have the oil analyze itself. And second of all, you should always go to your mechanic, go to your independent shop, because they probably have far more experience with it than you ever will.
Yes, here's what I do for customers, and it doesn't require an oil analyzing machine. I have customers come in and they say, I want to use regular oil. And I say, fine, if you want to use regular oil, we'll let you, but when we're going to look on the car, we see, how long has it been since your oil change? Well, it's been 3,000 miles. We'll go take the oil cap off after the car is at operating temperature, and we've smelled the 5-gas coming out the tailpipe, take our same 5-gas machine, sniff the hydrocarbons that are inside the oil, take the oil cap off, and normally at 3,000 miles, it's around 700 parts per million. And I say, okay, it's time for an oil change. What we're seeing a lot of is people that will go put the regular oil in there, and they'll go 5,000, 7,000 miles like their owner's manual says, and when we sniff the oil, it's at 1,800, 2,000 parts per million of raw gas that's inside the crankcase. Now, that's not good, and then we convince them to go to full synthetic, and we want to see you every 6 months. We'd sniff the crankcase after 6 months or 5,000 to 6,000 miles, and it's around 400 to 500 hydrocarbons. That's how much better sealing the full synthetic oil does in keeping the engine clean. And I don't know if you've seen that or if you want to recommend that, but that's one of the things that because I think just about every shop in Georgia should have a 5-gas machine, because don't y'all have state inspections up there?
We do only have it in about a tenth of the counties.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't have state inspections. Yeah, we don't have state inspections here, but I can't fix a car without at least getting a baseline on it. And when I And what I what I do is we sniff the crankcase when it comes in, and if it's around 700, it needs an oil change. If it's around 1400, it needs an oil change and clean the throttle body out on this thing. The throttle body is dirty. If it's at 2500 parts per million, it needs an oil change, clean the throttle body, and you better figure out where the secondary ignition miss is, because it's got one. And I'm seeing these cars come in, BMWs, Mercedes, Volvos, that are going these 10, 12,000 mile oil changes, and I sniff the crankcase, and they're at 3, 4, 5,000 parts per million on hydrocarbons. And I just kind of look at him and go, how long do you want this car to last? Oh, forever. Well, it ain't gonna last forever like this, fella, because you're circulating raw gas in that oil. And it's eating everything up. It's destroying it. And that's why I tell people, please spend the extra money on the oil changes. I think that was the biggest thing I saw that your friends were talking about. They didn't want to spend that extra money for full synthetic. But it is a heck of a lot cheaper than buying an engine.
It's not only cheaper to buy an engine, but it's cheaper over the long run to just, if you simply put in the best ingredients, you end up with the best recipe. That's what I always tell people.
Now,
if they always go for the cheap Chinese stuff, you're going to end up with the equivalent of cheap Chinese fast food. That's pretty much how it works. And most people, unfortunately, are used to it, because by the time that the car used to drive fantastic, and then over the course of weeks, months, years, it starts to wear down, and then they think they have a heap. Well, the reason why it's a heap is because you took a shining star and you put about 20,000 pounds of crush and run gravel on top of it.
That's exactly right. And it's like, now, in your findings, you said you've looked at 10,000 cars a year in your business. Finding out what they're worth and everything. In your business, in your opinion, if someone wants to do the best they can for their car, what would you recommend on the type oil and the type oil change intervals? If they have a car that says 7,500 miles for normal use, which most car owners see that normal use thing on there and they believe, what would, in your opinion, as someone that investigates cars, understands how they work, the livelihood of them, what would you recommend as a someone that knows a little bit about this, about the intervals?
I would recommend actually going a little bit above and beyond what they say that you should do. For example, I typically, if I haven't been constantly trading vehicles up and down, what I like to do is I like to use a conventional oil, usually around every 4, maybe 5,000 miles, but it depends on the engine. I like to be able to, when I put parts on a vehicle, I like to have really a step above the baseline of, discount auto parts. I either use Napa or I use a dealership. I will look a little bit on price on that, but not a lot. I'm looking more at standards and quality of work. And for a personal thing, if you really want have your car last as long as possible, just go to somebody you trust. Let them take care of it. Let them be the expert. Let you be the joyful recipient of their expertise. And that way you'll be able to have a car for as long as you do. But always invest in quality parts. If you have a question about it, go to an enthusiast forum and share your predicament with them, or share what you want to do. Do you need to replace the struts? Okay.
Right.
What are the best struts to use at this point? Because I realize that getting struts straight from the dealership is extremely expensive, but there may be others that are highly comparable to what you already have on your vehicle.
You're absolutely right.
I would always consult experts first and foremost.
Now, now we're going to switch a little gears here, no pun intended. In your experience over the last 10 years in the automotive repair industry, what have you seen changing that didn't used to be in the last 10 years? Because you've been in this for a while. What do you see how the shops are changing in a good way, a bad way? What are you seeing, as from someone that doesn't repair cars for a living? You don't turn wrenches every day. What are you seeing in the shops out there that's developing, that's good, that's bad, that's ugly? What do you see in that area?
I see. I'll start with the bad first. The bad thing that I see for the most part is a lot of dealerships are not really training people to be diagnostic technicians. They're training people to simply go for the X repair, the Y repair. You're going to do this, you're going to do this over and over. And there's a way to start like that, but when you're doing it for 5 years and all of a sudden you're still doing brakes, there's a problem with that.
Yeah, there is. I agree. All right. Yeah. So so that's the bad part. What's the good part? We got about a minute left.
Okay, I would say the good part is that people are a lot more conscientious about their vehicles now than they used to be. It used to be okay to have a vehicle that I would call smoked and drank and hung around with the bad boys. And
not anymore.
These days, having that type of vehicle is completely unacceptable, and people are more used to actually taking care of the vehicles. And I would say that the oils and components, on average, are actually a bit better than they used to be 10 years ago. A lot of that also has to do with the fact that the manufacturers are using the same platform, the same engines, the same powertrains on a larger cross-section of vehicles. I think that does make a tremendous difference.
It does make a difference. Stephen, I want to thank you so much. I enjoy when you call here. Can I get you to call again next week at 9:45?
Absolutely.
I love that. All right, that's Stephen Lang, automotive journalist. You can check him out on Facebook. Give me a call. We'll be right back.
James Auto Center, we fix it right, guaranteed. Beep, 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 yeah.